start and he'll catch up. Have to be, sorry.
Good evening and welcome to the November 21st, 2016 Albany City Council meeting. Please rise and join Vice Mayor McQuaid in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barnes, he'll be
late.
I think he's on his way.
Councilmember Nason,
Present.
Councilmember Pilch,
Here.
Vice Mayor McQuaid,
Here.
Mayor Moss.
Here. While the schedule originally called for a closed session tonight, that was canceled, so there's nothing to report on, which brings us to the consent calendar. The consent calendar are items normally passed in one motion unless somebody from the council or the audience would like to remove an item for further discussion.
I move the consent calendar.
Okay, because I wanted to talk about, just to add a question about one of the items. And the item that I had a question, or just a point of information, the Ocean View Park drainage. I know there's been some discussion in some quarters about converting that field, and what we're doing down there would not hinder that in any way. Okay. All right, so we have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Could we have a
Council-
vote, please?
Councilmember Nason,
Aye.
Councilmember Pilch,
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid,
Yes.
Mayor Moss.
Yes, and the motion carries. Next up will be a presentation. This is a statement that was part of our response to the national elections. Peggy, would you like to read it?
We, the members of the Albany City Council, recognize that many in our community are hurting and fearful as a result of the recent national election. Thus, we would like to take this opportunity to reaffirm that we welcome and value all of our diverse citizens, regardless of where they are from, who they love, how they worship, how they look, their abilities, or how they vote. We invite all of the citizens of Albany to join with us in creating a safe and welcoming community, one in which we celebrate our differences and learn from each other, one in which we are proud to raise our children. Diversity is not about how we differ. Diversity is about embracing one another's uniqueness. From Ola Joseph.
Very good. We could open it up for council discussion, or I'd like to open it up to the audience, I believe.
We have
People-
speaker cards.
We have some speaker
Sarah
cards.
Hinckley, Perrine Shaw, and Brian Beal.
And whoever was called, come on up.
Yeah.
I wrote this out because I'm full of emotion here. My name is Sarah Hinckley. I live on San Gabriel Avenue. For those of you who don't know, there was graffiti on the Greenway that said "White Power" painted this weekend, and 2 swastikas this morning. The "White Power" graffiti was written on the Greenway behind my backyard fence. A friend and I discovered 2 swastikas on the same block this morning while I was heading to Ocean View with my children. My 7-year-old watched while my husband scrubbed the words "White Power" off the pavement yesterday. Regardless of who painted these words and symbols or why, they function as vehicles of intimidation and terror, and I believe we should respond accordingly. We live in a community that is diverse, but also majority white, with a small percentage of Black and Latino residents who have not always been well represented in our city, not reflected in our council membership, for example. I've had many conversations over the years with parents of African American children in particular who feel that racism is often minimized in this community. We need to take the possibilities of hatred and harassment seriously and not rely on a belief that diversity and progressive values make us immune to acts of bias. I'd like to ask people who are here, the council, how are we actively working with families of color to create that safe city for them? How are we teaching our white children to create that community, to stand up to racism? The intent and the individuals behind this graffiti are, to me, in some ways irrelevant. The symbols and phrases have readily understood powerful meanings that reverberate through the community, and I think those meanings and reverberations need to be addressed. I appreciate the intent behind the City Council statement. I think we need a much stronger statement and a framework for responding to incidents like these. I'd like to know what the city's plans are for making it easier for residents to report such incidents and get real information about how the city will be responding. There seemed to be a lot of confusion about who had reported what, when things would be taken care of. I don't even know if a police report was filed for either incident, and our family is one of a handful of families who actually interacted directly with the police. My family plans to use this experience to organize a community response. I hope other people will join us, but mostly I encourage the council to take it beyond the admirable statements in this response to the election and take these incidents very seriously, because I do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Parreen Shah. I live here in Albany. At a personal level, I fully agree with the statement drafted by the City Council. As we've all seen, this election has emboldened forces of hate throughout our country, and as our previous speaker just indicated, right here in our backyard in Albany. As a statement by the City Council, however, I respectfully disagree with the opening of the statement as drafted, specifically the inclusion of the hurting and fearful language. And the reason for that is because the statement as written further reinforces a narrative of division. It indicates the council is unhappy with the outcome of the election, a fairly run, fairly held election. We may disagree with it, but this is our democratic process. Simply put, the statement emboldens the forces of hate because it paints a picture that local government is against the election outcome. As a person of color, and I say this very respectfully to the council and to everyone here, it's people who look like me who will bear the negative consequences of an emboldened hate, not many of you. I have two alternatives. The first is I believe this statement better serves the council's intent and interests if the hurting and fearful language is removed. And instead, the statement is used as a reaffirmation of the core values of our Albany community. We don't need an election to reaffirm our core values. Alternatively, another way that I think the statement could be made more effective is if it's framed specifically as a response to the acts that the previous speaker spoke about, the acts of hate, rather than as a response to the election. That would send a very clear message about the values of our community, and it would also eliminate any connection, desired or not, to any sort of partisan political agenda. Either way, statements are important and statements are necessary, but as the previous speaker also indicated, they're only a first step. And while I don't have any answers for how we can continue to keep Albany a place of inclusion and progress, I'm more than happy to partner with anyone here and anyone on the council to keep that dialogue alive and going and to continue keeping Albany the inclusive community that it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Beal, member of Social Economic Justice Commission, here speaking on behalf of myself. So I wrote up a letter to the City Council about tonight about a week ago, and already things have changed quite a bit in the last week. But I just want to point out how we opened this ceremony with our Pledge of Allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, which includes freedom of religion, and freedom to pursue happiness and all this other stuff, right? But freedom of religion, separation of religion and state. We now have a president-elect who's suggested discrimination against people based on religion, and I think that fully justifies what was written in the statement. Perhaps, and I'm glad the gentleman spoke to this, perhaps what is needed is not elimination of that clause, but to be more specific, because the reason why people are hurting and afraid is because of the hateful rhetoric involved in this campaign. Anyway, so what I had prepared to talk about was how the city now, regardless of whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent, one thing we can count on is there's going to be a lot of changes in Washington that are going to impact Albany in several ways, already one of which is crime. It can impact our budget, and it can impact the economy. And it can happen in very sudden and unexpected ways. And nimbleness and community engagement are going to be very important in this community. And I mean, speaking to the people, the diversity issue, now the affordable housing issues that we have that threaten to basically roll back the clock 50 years is more important than ever, because now, in addition to facing a loss of housing, people of lower incomes and ethnic groups, they're faced with this sort of Nazi thing. So lastly, what I wanted to talk about this incident, and I think it's going to be very important to address what the procedure is, because one concern I have, and I understand, this is something that needs to be addressed quickly, and I understand why people would go out and clean it up, but there's also the crime reporting aspect of it. It is a crime scene, and we need to understand or say what the protocol is for Albany police to come out and investigate, because there's also like trying to catch these people. So that said, I think we need some kind of time frame that we need an accelerated time frame to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I, at one point of order, are we on 5-1 or are we good to the city?
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. Sorry, Susan, I just wanted to make sure we haven't opened it up. We're just talking about 5-1 for now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, seeing no one else from the audience coming up, let's bring it back to council for some comments and thoughts and responses. Who would like to start us out?
Well, I'll start, but I may want a second turn at this. Parrine, am I saying your name correctly? I attended a meeting last night in the village that was called by some village residents who were quite concerned about an incident that had happened in the village and just the climate in general. And so I think the dialogue is starting, and I think that was really important to have sort of reaching out from sort of what sometimes we think of as mainland Albany and the village to come together as one looking at these issues. I've also started, and I had started this a while back, a community group working on inclusion. It's a very small group at this point. It's not exclusive. It just happens to be a small group. And if you're interested in that, we can talk later, and I can give you some information. The school district under Peter Parenti has a Black parent organization. This year, I think they're focusing on math, but it's a very active group. I've attended one of their meetings. So I think there are things happening that maybe we don't all know about. Albany Reads this year was put on by the library, is reading All-American Boy, which if you're not familiar with that, it's a story of a young African-American young man who is accused of stealing in a store and is beaten up by the cops, and the story goes on from there. Interesting story, and the whole 8th grade is going to be reading that and discussing it. The authors are coming out to talk about it, so that'll be a big event that's coming. So there are definitely things that we are doing besides simply making a statement.
Other thoughts? Michael?
Well, yeah, I have some thoughts. So I think that community members have raised some interesting issues. I certainly don't want to appear partisan in this statement, and I want to respect the office of the president. However, I do believe that this president-elect has suggested targeting people based on their religion and has made racist statements. So the bounds between a race where people talk about issues and where they get personal, I think has been crossed. And therefore, I think that referencing the election is okay in this context. However, this statement, people should know, was written before the incidents of this past weekend. So it very well might want to, we might want to have more positive language in here about what our values are, as was suggested by someone. And maybe we'll want to reference these incidents. I don't know, but I think the idea about having that positive language is a good one. I'm also concerned for our city and our region and our state. I think that I think addressing the issue of inclusion and diversity is appropriate here. I do think that maybe we ought to. I don't know how much we should talk about this now, but I think we ought to talk about, as someone alluded to, how do we report these incidents, and what is council's expectation for staff's response? And maybe staff would prefer to go back and talk with the police chief and generate a suggested response and a suggested mechanism whereby people can easily notify staff and the council of these incidents. I think that would be a very good thing for us to do. And Ms. Brinkley, please do keep us informed of your community actions. We'd appreciate that. And so maybe we want to work on this and staff work on this in policy and instructions for council members and for community members, and come back and finalize this at the next meeting, perhaps.
I'd be curious, is there a protocol for hate crimes or incidents when they happen in Albany? But
The number one best thing to do is to call 911, because that will send you right to the dispatch. Sometimes people are uncomfortable calling 911 because in their mind, maybe it's not a life or death emergency, but that's what it's there for, is to get the police to come out. And every time a 911 call is made, they do file a report and write down the incident. We also have a non-emergency line that is answered 24/7, and that too can be used at any time of day or night to get a hold of someone. But the best thing right now is to just call 911. I can talk to the police chief. He happens to be out of town right now, about if there's anything in addition we could do and take some action that way. I'd be happy to follow up on that.
Reading this statement, I agree with the speaker that the first sentence could be read as the council disagreeing with the result of the election. I don't think that was the intent, but it could be read that way. So I was going to suggest a slightly different language. Many in our community are hurting and fearful are hurting and fearful following the unusually divisive recent national electoral campaigns or campaign or process, because it's not the election itself that is what we are objecting to. What we are objecting to is language and encouragement of extremists that may have occurred in connection with those campaigns.
But Rochelle, I do think that since the election, there's been a definite uptick across the country in violence and hate crime, and we're seeing that all the time in the media. So it's more than the campaign. If a different result would have a different result. So
Agreed.
I'm happy with changing the first sentence, but the election was the trigger to the violence. The campaign set the stage. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The campaign certainly set the stage and the tone.
Yeah.
But the result is what's triggering the violence.
I have no problem passing a resolution that objects to the results of the election. You know, I think it's we're elected officials. We can object to the results of the election, but if we're trying not to, I guess it's just the unclarity of it that is bothering me a little.
I think this statement actually is pretty much hits it. I mean, I don't think the fear and anxiety would be still as great as it was before the election if the results had been different. And, you know, I guess I sound partisan. I am partisan. But, you know, I know I'm supposed to be the mayor and be very neutral, but this was one incident in my life where it's very difficult to be neutral. You know, I'm quite concerned, the things that Brian mentioned about our funding. You know, we'll get by, and it's going to be a major hit on California, but we'll survive. We are the sixth richest country in the world. I think we'll be okay, although it'll take some changes. But I do not like what I see going down in Washington, the appointments that are being made, or any of this right now. And I don't think this is too strong, personally. I think that there are many people who are hurting and fearful as a result of this election, a result of the outcome of the election. And I think we can make a stronger statement on this. You know, I would, one of the things that got me thinking about this is that even though this isn't on our agenda tonight, but it may be time to start considering a sanctuary city status. You know, there's many levels of that. And I think people hear sanctuary city, oh, we're going to be having to set up tents in the fields over here for people coming in from elsewhere. No, it's you know, the level that I would envision it is that, you know, we make the statement that we're not going to be enforcing ICE regulations and rules, that this is a city where we're doing city work and not federal work, no matter, you know, what they think, you know, they want us to do. And if we take a hit on that, we'll take a hit on it. But I mean, I think there are times where you have to, you know, take a stand. We're not going to be passing that tonight, but I think that we should be having that discussion. I don't know. I would be happy to vote on this the way it is. I don't think it's too strong.
I don't think it's too strong either. I am only concerned that it's a little ambiguous, whether we are objecting to the campaign, the election itself, or the outcome of the election. But I think if people are comfortable with the implication that we are indeed deploring the outcome of the election, which in fact I think probably we all do, I'm perfectly comfortable with it.
Well, I'm okay with it too, and I'm interested in the sanctuary city idea. I've been asked by several people if Albany would consider, if I would consider Albany becoming a sanctuary city, and I'm very interested. I understand that Richmond.
Can we stay on the agenda topic? I think we're getting out in the weeds a little bit.
I'm sorry that I got us off on that, but I think that is something that is somewhat related, and we should bring up in another context, in another meeting.
Then I suggest we have an agenda item in a future agenda on that.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with this statement, and my hope and my belief already, but just to say it out loud, is that the staff and the city treat any incidents like this with the utmost seriousness and address them with the greatest speed possible. I'll leave it there.
So, could we get a motion on this?
I'll move we accept the statement.
I'd be happy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Could we have a vote, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, and the motion carries. Okay. Next up is Good to the City. This is the opportunity for members of the audience to speak on issues that are not on tonight's agenda or answer your phone.
Susan Schwartz, Letitia Berlin, and Peter Campbell.
Apologies for my confusion. I'm getting old. We're very happy about the rain, which, for among other more important things, helped rein in the more than 200 plants that we planted at our Cerrito Creek work party since the last time I was here. We've brought you hot off the press. You were the first outside our group to see our annual newsletter with all these pretty pictures about the things that we've done. This is actually part of our once-a-year fundraising. And the other thing we're really happy about is that for 20 years, just this one appeal has kept us going, just donations from citizens. But I'm really here tonight to talk about something that I've just learned. Probably I don't need to because you're going to be taking it up. But when I made this handout, I didn't know that. This handout deals with one of the possibilities for spending the $800,000 plus remaining in the Measure R funds earmarked for creeks. And we are not recommending this project, but our plan was to come every council meeting and talk about one of the possibilities. This one just happened to come first. We're not recommending what you should do, but this is certainly a possibility, and it is to build some sort of footbridge over Cerrito Creek at Keynes. Excuse me, over Cerrito Creek at Creekside Park. As you probably know, there's about 4/10 of a mile where between Pierce and San Pablo where you have to ford. Surprising numbers of people cross there, and the variety is quite amazing. During our work party, and thanks to one of our volunteers, and a little after, we did some informal polling, totally non-scientific. The large majority of people said, yes, it would be great to have a bridge, but you need to be clear that not everybody thinks that's a good idea. In my mind, safety is a big consideration. I happened to be out once during a storm. And a homeless man fell into the creek. It took at least 15 minutes for the police to get to him. It's not a big deal, I think, to build this kind of bridge. There are two of them on the Cotonesis Creek restoration, one for trucks, one is only hold moors, but they were just prefabs. They weren't terribly expensive. So I'm just hoping that you will consider this as one of the possibilities. There are several others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Letitia Berlin. I live on Washington Avenue in Albany. I came tonight because of the graffiti incident. I hope that's okay that I'm speaking now instead of in the 5-1. So I saw this, I first learned about it because I'm on the listserv for the Albany Strollers and Rollers. And the person who found it first, I don't think that was you, Ms. Springman, it was the person who was running, posted it immediately. And I was of course, horrified, as was everybody else. And so I wanted to come here to be sure that that was going to be discussed, as Nick had said. So I'm really pleased, and thank you so much, Mrs. Brinkman, for standing up. I would like to talk with you and be involved with you in that community group. I'm here to also ask that the City of Albany consider putting on their agenda for a future time that the city could institute some kind of public service campaign. It's great to hear from Vice Mayor McQuaid that the events that are going on already in the schools, but I'd like to see things for the general population, for the adults as well as the kids. For instance, I mean, I was born in 1960. I'm one of those kids who never smoked because of the public service campaign against smoking. So I know those things are effective. So I think if we can do something to have a public service campaign as well as these community groups, I think that would be great. And so along Ms. Brinkman and the city, I would like to be considered as a volunteer for any kind of community effort that is considered. And while I'm up here, I want to say thanks for that statement, and thank you for bringing up the sanctuary city. I would definitely support that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Peter Campbell. I live here in Albany. And what I'm here to say tonight is I just wanted to comment a little bit on the public workshop that was held on the 16th. And also the online survey, which kind of restates the whiteboards which were present at the workshop. Now, this is obviously a well-meaning attempt to get public input on this topic. However, I felt it fell short in a number of respects. The workshop whiteboards were often not clear, and meaning the wording was not clear, and many of the selections presupposed the existence of rent control or rent review. And usually there were insufficient response options or lacked sufficient information to be able to write comments on the post-it notepads that were provided. Therefore, I question whether any meaningful data can actually be gleaned from those whiteboards. As far as the online survey is concerned, it largely doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Many questions are confusing. They're useless because they ask about what is already covered by state law. They have words with connotations that may vary depending on one's viewpoint, or they just I just question how they're worded. Online surveys can also be gamed. I just don't see how you can get any useful information from this. The many questions presuppose the existence of rent review or rent control. Therefore, you can't get unbiased answers. The survey was set up in such a way as to imply that decisions have already been made, so why go through the exercise? Finally, I want to say that a group of property owners here in Albany have gotten together. We're the Albany Property Rights Advocates is what we've called ourselves, and we're putting together a number of what we believe are workable alternatives to the housing problem here in Albany. And we hope that we can get together with the council and perhaps even at a public workshop so we can present our ideas and present them to the public and to you for consideration, because we think we have a lot of good ideas that could possibly be put into effect.
Thank you.
Next one, Brian. And after that would be Brian.
Okay, two topics, and again, speaking as me. At this time, I wanted to give my overview of what's happening with the housing situation. In our discussions about the Rent Review Board, I came to the following understanding. So tenants are faced with dramatically rising rents and displacement. The landlords are faced with an unpredictable business model with slim profit margins, constant headaches. So we had proposals from tenants would like to see some sort of restrictions in place, and landlords bring up the argument that, well, we need more supply, or we need to just allow people to be displaced and get new people that have more money. I'm speaking, sir. I'm speaking. You're...
Okay. Just calm down. Just say your piece and...
Yes.
Take the argument out in the hall.
Yes. So I think, what it calls a need for is some sort of silver bullet. And I think that Vice Mayor McQuaid provided us with that silver bullet with the shared housing workshop. Because the rationale we've seen previously was, okay, so you've got so many people and you've got so many people per housing unit. In order to accommodate more people, you need more housing units. Well, you can increase the number of people per housing unit, and that's the beauty of this shared housing. At the workshop, we saw 4 alternatives, and this just appears to be the lowest cost way to basically lower the demand for housing and stabilize the cost. I think this is a good tool in our toolkit. So the other item I wanted to mention is the drop-in resource center. That something like this would be really good to have people have a place to go. Finally, so second item, if you happen to be a registered Democrat, we're going to be having our caucus election here in January 8th, Sunday, January 8th. And it's actually going to be in Albany. There'll be further announcements about it, but I wanted to make sure people got it on their calendar. This is where we pick who will represent us at the Democratic Convention and control what policies are taken to respond to the kind of the events that we were talking about earlier. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Parsley, Albany resident. I had something I was going to talk about tonight, but kind of shifted topics. As most of you may know, on council, the Lions have come forward with a proposal to, I guess, no uncertain terms, sue the city and certain members of the council with regards to the cross on Albany Hill, which seems to be an ongoing thing. At the risk of alienating some of my friends and family, I'm going to kind of take a stand on that here today. I enjoy the cross. It reminds me of when I was a kid. I also enjoy the manger scene at Key Route and Solano. I also enjoyed Foster's Freeze and Discounts Unlimited. And those are all things I really enjoyed as a kid, and they're gone now. And I still like to think about them, but they're not here anymore. And I think the time has come that that something like the cross has outlived its usefulness, unfortunately. And I think it's time that the city, even at the risk of a lawsuit, take a stand on this. And it's not really, if we're looking to be inclusive, it is not an inclusive object. It's a nice lighted cross. I mean, I like it. I'm kind of like a moth, to a flame. It's a nice thing. We could put something else lighted up there. I do not want a coexist sign. I'm letting you know right now. I saw that earlier. But it's just not appropriate in this day and age. And I hope the Lions hear that. I've looked over their code of ethics and their code of conduct, and a number of the items seem to violate that. I think that they should be ashamed. I think the international should be absolutely ashamed that they won't step in and resolve this. If they want to be partners in this community, then they need to respect the community, and they're not. And it may be time for the community to stand up and say, this is not who we want to be, and we're not going to attend your events. I know they do good things in the community, but this is not a good thing they're doing. Suing the council members, suing the city is not a good thing. And it's time for the city to stand up and say, that's it, we've had enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're We've run out of public speakers on good of the city, which brings us to the public hearing on approving an agreement to participate in a joint powers agency and first reading of ordinance authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program.
Good evening. The item before you is the second reading of an ordinance authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program. On November 7th, Council approved an agreement to participate in a joint powers agency for the East Bay Community Energy Program. Albany has strived to be a leader in climate action, and its recently adopted general plan includes ambitious goals of 60% reductions by 2035 and net zero emissions by 2050. And these new goals will require the implementation of additional innovative policies and programs. The Climate Action Plan identifies community choice aggregation, or CCA, as an option for addressing emissions from buildings because nearly 2/3 of Albany's emissions come from building energy use. CCA allows public agencies, in this case the East Bay Community Energy JPA, to procure electric power on behalf of customers. PG&E would still be responsible for delivering energy, repairing lines, and serving customers. Customers retain the choice to continue to purchase power directly from PG&E by opting out of the CCA, and customers who receive electricity from a CCA are still entitled to PG&E's special pricing, efficiency programs, and rebates. There are currently 4 operational CCAs in California, and another 26 are under consideration in the state. CCA offers customers a choice in energy providers. The East Bay Community Energy Program also aims to reduce rates and overall greenhouse gas emissions, increase local renewable energy build-out, and create local green jobs. The East Bay Community Energy Program has not yet been created, so there's some uncertainty regarding what will be offered to Albany residents. But the benefit of joining now is that you will be able to help craft that program. And if the program does not live up to its promise to reduce rates or greenhouse gas emissions, the city can withdraw from the JPA before it's rolled out to customers, before the program launches. There have also been questions about the influence of larger cities calling a voting shares vote, in which case Albany would have less influence in a program like this, but this is not played out in other existing JPAs. And the county is currently providing startup funding for this program, and there could be a request for short-term credit support, but it would not be a requirement, and this typically is something that's been provided by the largest jurisdictions in other CCAs, so it seems like less of a concern for Albany to bear that burden. So that's where we are now. That's just a bit of an update, and let me know if you have any questions.
Questions? I guess not. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this?
Yeah, I think this is a real good idea. It's going to give us choices. Competition is always good. And, well, in light of the recent election results, it could help protect us against the kind of shenanigans that went on with Enron and so forth, where I think this is going to help insulate us from what's happening nationally with energy prices by helping to produce the energy here in Alameda County. We need to look at it not just from the city's perspective, but from the county. I don't think we're going to have a lot of solar in Albany because of the lack of sun, but that's something we can do further inland, like in Livermore, and we can take advantage of that. And I think it gives us a lot of leverage because of the increased voting power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dan Lieberman. I live on Ramona Avenue in Albany, and I just want to reiterate my support for this. I have been working in renewable energy for 20 years. I think this is a great effort. It's a great opportunity for the city of Albany, its residents and businesses to switch to renewable energy at minimal or no cost. I want to compliment Claire on her fine work developing the report and just continuing the effort to move this opportunity forward for the city and its constituents. And that's all. Just wanted to voice my support.
Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Something that's occurred to me. I think there's 4 CCAs in the Bay Area now, and
Five. Yeah.
Five, and
5 operating.
26 coming online in the state is what they're talking about, or in progress.
I don't have a good count, but there are a lot, yeah.
Is it possible, is there that much renewable, no greenhouse gas energy out there to supply everybody?
Well, this is an effort that's going to take time to develop those resources. No one is suggesting that all of these communities will become 100% renewable overnight, but there are a few dynamics happening at this time. One that was mentioned in your last meeting is that Diablo Canyon will be coming offline. Mm-hmm. That creates a gap, a supply gap that will need to be filled, and I suspect will likely be filled in large part by this community choice effort, because by that time, probably 50% of California will be served by CCA, and so there will be a supply transition that's opened up. And then I think you'll just see the typical procurement cycle for a CCA is not an immediate thing, it's a long-term. So Peninsula Clean Energy, where I work, for example, we're starting at 50% renewable, 75% greenhouse gas free, because we buy 25% large hydro and we get 25% system power. But our procurement is done in stages, so we're going to be buying more and more renewable energy over time. So we have a large procurement out that we're getting the results back on. We'll procure. We have some stuff under short-term contract, and just will evolve over probably a 10-year time from 50% renewable to 100% renewable.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
right.
you.
Yeah, sure.
Any comments? Michael, do you have anything? So let's.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
We talked a little bit last time about jobs, and I want to reiterate that I think it's important that we really push for job training in both the high schools and the community colleges. And as we have a seat at the table for this, I think that's something that Albany really wants to push for, and that those jobs are here besides other places, but that we get a piece of that. And I think we would all say that we also want to push for as much renewable as quickly as possible.
Okay, very good. Could we have a vote, please?
Did we have a motion?
Oh, do we have a motion? Just a second reading. Do we need a motion passed? Yeah, I'm sorry. We have a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Would you like me to read it?
I'll be happy to second it. Now could we have a vote?
Councilmember Barnes?
No.
Councilmember Nason?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Moss?
Yes, and the motion carries. So that's pretty much it for this evening. Upcoming meetings, meetings attended.
The JPA meeting.
Yes, you and I both attended the JPA meeting. And looks like that's progressing on of getting a replacement turf for the fields down there.
Yeah, and a grant the grant application that I think that we reported on before has been submitted, and we should know the results within 6 months or so.
Okay. I attended both the housing things that were held here, the shared housing workshop and the workshop on how was that described? the rent review board.
Rent review, mhm.
Yeah, although there was more than just rent review in there. It was a kind of a smorgasbord. Very interesting format, I would say. I was last week at an AC Transit Commission retreat. The comments earlier about worrying about federal funds getting cut off. I was told 88% of our highway funds come from the feds. So if that gets cut off, highway projects will be pretty much in danger. But we'll see. Maybe that wouldn't be the worst possible thing. And also, the Housing Authority of Alameda County, which I do once a month, that might come to an end if President-elect Trump follows through on his idea to end HUD, which basically funds the voucher system for federal vouchers for housing. So it will be interesting.
I wanted to mention, and by the way, I assume that with the rent review, I was also there. I assume we're going to get some kind of formal report after the online work has been done and so forth. But prior to our considering the issue again.
Currently, we have the debrief from the meeting and the information we've gathered thus far for the December 5th meeting, council meeting.
Okay. And I don't think we need to go into any further information about that. I did want to mention that I was at the Albany Landfill Dog Owners Group beach cleanup, and I don't know if everyone is aware about the owl, that we have an owl in the burrowing owl habitat.
But is it nesting? That's the question that I keep hearing about.
Yeah, nobody quite knows what that owl is doing. There are accusations that a dog got into the habitat and flushed it out. But whatever the owl turns out to be doing, I think it's encouraging that there was an owl there, particularly in light of the JPA activity, that we're going to be building out the final approved but unbuilt field, which happens to be where the ground squirrels live, and which are probably the reason why the owls that periodically return to the tiny enclosure next to the sports fields are there. So if we're going to lose some more owl-friendly resources over by the sports field, it would certainly be nice if the owls are hanging out in the habitat at long last.
They finally got that memo about the sport. Okay.
It was within their price range.
Shared housing.
Right. Okay, with that, I will adjourn tonight's meeting.